Hey everybody, how's it going? Today we're going to be going over and showing you how to install the Stealth Hitches Hidden Rack Receiver with Towing Kit here on our 2013 BMW 3 Series convertible. So this is what our trailer hitch is going to look like installed on our 3 Series here, which brings us to the main feature of this Stealth Hitch, and that it's completely hidden when not in use. Everything is going to be tucked away behind the bumper here, so we don't have to worry about any bulky cross tubes hanging down below, affecting our ground clearance and taking away from the overall look of the vehicle. We also don't have to worry about the receiver tube as well. Everything is completely hidden, therefore we have a 100% factory finish when we're not towing or hauling. So we have two different options here for the Stealth Hitch. We have the rack receiver option, which just comes with this here. This is going to be a 2" by 2" receiver tube that's going to be designed for use with your hitch mounted accessories such as bike racks and cargo carriers. You cannot tow with this. And then we also have another version of this kit that we can tow with, and it comes with both the ball mount with integrated 2" hitch ball as well as the rack receiver. So the best option for you is really going to come down to what we're going to be using it for. If we're just using our trailer hitch for a bike rack or cargo carrier, then we could save some money and just simply purchase the rack receiver version. But if we were going to be using a bike rack and cargo carrier and towing, or just towing, in that case we would want to purchase the one that comes with the towing kit. I'd also like to point out that this is a complete towing kit that has everything you need to tow a trailer, including the lights. So speaking of those lights, obviously if you're going to be towing a trailer, you need a way to transmit these signals from the vehicle to the lights on that trailer so we can remain safe and legal. And that's where this 4-pole connector comes into place. This is an industry standard type. This 4-pole, also referred to as a 4-way flat. This is going to be the most common type, and most trailers are going to use this. It's going to transmit the stop and turn signal circuits for both the left and right hand side, as well as the running light circuits. So how this is going to work, it's very simple. What we're going to do is we're going to grab the accessory that we're going to be using. Whether we're going to be towing a trailer, we would obviously grab our ball mount, or if we're just hooking up a bike rack, we would just grab the rack receiver. And all we do is basically just line it up. We have this circular here that's going to line up with the round opening here in the latching mechanism, and basically just peek under here so you can see where you're sticking it, and then you're just going to use your palm at the very bottom of the accessory and push straight up until you hear it lock into place. Then we need to come onto the other side of the receiver tube and close the lock. So here's the lock core on the latching mechanism over here on the driver's side. Once we have our accessory in place, we're simply going to press that to lock it, and then you're going to take the included dust cap here and you're just going to place that over the lock core so we don't have to worry about any water or dirt debris getting in there. But that's it. We're ready to hook up either our trailer if we're towing, or our bike rack or cargo carrier if we're just using the rack receiver. It's that simple. So now let's say we're done towing our trailer, or we're done using our bike rack or cargo carrier. All we need to do is remove the cover there from the lock core. We're going to take one of the keys that comes in your kit here. You do have to insert it a certain way. There's going to be a knob that sticks at the top. So you can insert it into that, and then you're going to turn it until that lock core pops out. And then we'll come on the other side and show you the latching mechanism that we need to engage, so this will drop out. So here's that latching mechanism. It's very simple to use. We're going to take one hand and brace it on the bottom of our accessory here, and then we're just going to simply rotate this, and it should come right out. Just that easy. And then what we're going to do is, once we've removed that, we have a rubber plug in your kit here that you're going to install into the bottom of the latching mechanism, just again to prevent any water or dirt from getting in there and possibly binding up the latching mechanism. So it's definitely a must to reinstall that rubber plug there. So in regards to the rack receiver here, it's going to have a standard 2" by 2" receiver tube opening, and this is going to allow us to use a wide variety of bike racks and cargo carriers. We have plenty to choose from here at eTrailer. You'll also want to keep in mind that it has a 350-pound capacity while you're using this. Therefore, you really shouldn't have any issues for a cargo carrier maxed out, or even for bikes. Now, granted, I would like to say that you are still limited by the vehicle. So the vehicle may have a lower tongue weight rating than this particular trailer hitch because they are tested separately. And if that's the case, you would have to abide by the lower of the 2 rated components, whether that's the hitch or the vehicle. Now, in regards to our ball mount here, so while we're using this and we're towing a trailer, we have a 3,500 pound gross trailer weight rating. That's the max amount we can pull on our fully loaded trailer. And we also have a 350-pound tongue weight rating, which is going to be the downward force on the receiver tube. Now, keep in mind, these capacities are for the hitch only, which is tested separately of the vehicle. Therefore, you need to verify your vehicle's towing capacity in the owner's manual and abide by the lower of the two rated components, whether that's the hitch or the vehicle. So now we got a couple measurements for you guys here. The first one is just going to be the ground clearance. So the distance from the ground to the bottom edge of the rack receiver, which is going to be right at about 8¼ inches. And in regards to the hitch pin hole, this is going to be actually past the bumper by about 1/2 inch or so, so you won't have any issues at all with your folding accessories coming into contact with the vehicle. So in regards to installation, this one really isn't too bad. They've actually innovated these kits over the time that I've been installing them. The wiring is much more simpler now. I definitely like the changes they've made to that. There's usually not a ton of modifications on this particular vehicle here. The only modification we do have to make is we have to trim a panel that's underneath. That's a very small panel that you could actually replace. I would assume that doesn't really cost that much. It's a very small panel. It's only held on with a couple fasteners. So we do have to trim that, but it's really inconspicuous, if you will. It's mounted on the underside of the vehicle, so you really can't see it. And again, if this was a leased vehicle, you could easily replace that from the dealer for a nominal fee. So the first step of your installation, if we come inside the hatch of the vehicle here, directly behind the taillights, we have these little cover panels we have to remove. Now, in order to remove those, you're going to have one little fastener here. Looks like this. We need to take that out, and then we're just going to pry the rest of the panel out. And once we get that out, we should see the 3 nuts here that hold our taillight to the body of the vehicle. So we need to remove each of those 3 using a 8mm socket. And once we get each of those 3 nuts out, we should be able to pop the taillight. We do have one connector there attaching the taillight wiring there, so you want to go ahead and remove that. And then we'll just simply repeat that same thing on the other side. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to come outside the vehicle here. We're going to be looking for this removable panel. So we need to go ahead and pry that out. We're going to be using a pick tool, just like so. And that is going to reveal a torque screw, which we'll remove with a T25 Torx bit. So we have one of those on each side. We need to remove them both. So next we need to come inside the wheel well here. We have 3 screws, one at the bottom, one in the middle, and one more at the top. So these are just simply holding the fabric to the inside of the fender. So once we get those 3 screws out, we're going to have a different type of screw, which is going to be a Torx fastener that's going to go up just like so, sort of just directly behind this area here. We're going to need a T20 Torx bit to get that out. Now once we get those fasteners out, we'll just simply repeat that same process on the other side. So next thing we need to do is come underneath the vehicle here. We need to take an 8mm socket, and we need to remove each of these screws here on the outside. There should be 10 of them. They go all along the outside on both sides. There's also one at the back here. So again, we're going to use an 8mm socket and remove all those screws. Now we're going to switch over to a 10mm socket and remove the 4 screws here in the center. So now we're ready to remove the fascia from the vehicle. So we're going to come to either side here. We're going to grab onto the outside edge, just inside the fender liner there, and we're just going to begin pulling out. So you'll have to go ahead and release some of these clips by using a pry tool and just sort of pressing down and then working your way from one side to the other. So for these two sections here, these little clips that go into the fasteners that are attached to this little plastic shroud, what we did is we just took a trim panel tool, we just slid them under this and above the bumper there and just pressed down on that little tab there, and then we were able to release those without breaking them. And then once we get both sides unhooked, we should be able to bolt outward away from the vehicle. You're not going to be able to remove it entirely yet because we are going to have some sensors on the inside here we need to unplug. There's going to be a couple of them. You're just going to simply press down on that tab and then pull straight back. So next we need to remove the bumper beam. So we're going to take an 18mm deep well socket, and on each side we have 3 nuts securing it to the vehicle. There's 2 at the top and 1 at the bottom. Now with our nuts removed, we should just be able to pull the bumper beam straight out and off the vehicle. So now once we have the bumper beam off, we can take our hitch assembly here and set it into position on the vehicle, resting it on the studs. Now we'll take our factory nuts that we removed earlier and simply use these to secure the hitch to the vehicle. So the next thing we need to do is install our latching mechanism that looks like this. So when we're installing this, it's going to install between the brackets here on the hitch. We want to make sure that the locking mechanism is going to be on the driver's side, whereas the latch knob here is going to be on the passenger side. Now the installation of this is going to vary slightly depending on which kit you have. If you have the rack receiver kit, then you're just going to simply be installing these using the 2 bolts that already come in there. But if you're using the towing kit, then you need to install the safety chain loops, which actually go on the outside of these flanges here, and they also have longer bolts. So we just need to pay attention to that. For this particular customer here, we're going to be installing the towing kit as well. So we are going to be installing those additional brackets there and the longer bolts. But if you were just installing the rack receiver at home, the process would be very similar, even a lot easier. Just simply pop that into place, insert the 2 bolts, and then tighten it down, but we will show you that as well with our towing kit. So now we're ready to install the latching mechanism here. So we're going to take the assembly, we're just going to hold it up into place like so. And then if you have the towing kit, we're going to take our bracket here. So you're going to notice there's 2 holes at the top. Those are obviously going to line up with the 2 holes at the top of our flange. But we also have that oblong hole at the bottom. That needs to be facing the back. And over here on the latching side, you do sort of have to manipulate the bracket around that mechanism there. I forget which way you have to come over there first. There we go. And now once we have that on there, we're going to again hold it in place as best as we can. We're going to take one of our bolts, and again we're using the longer bolts here, and then we're just going to simply slide that through like so. And on the other side, pretty much the same process in reverse, but this side we don't have to worry about the latching mechanism as much. So we got one bolt in, we'll just push everything forward to line up the next one, and we should be able to insert that one fairly easy as well. Then we'll take our lock nuts here, we'll thread those on, and now we can tighten and torque these 2 bolts down to the specifications in your instructions using a 15/16 inch wrench and socket. So now the next part here is again going to come down to what kit you have. If you have the rack receiver kit, then we're simply going to throw our bumper and our taillights back on in the reverse order that we removed them. If you have the towing kit, we're going to start on our wiring. So now we're going to come to the passenger side of the vehicle, directly beside where our hitch is. We're going to have a grommet here that leads inside the vehicle. So what we're going to do is we're going to be very careful, but we're going to take a 3/8" drill bit and we're going to drill a hole in that grommet, not the wires inside. So again, be very careful. So we had a little trouble with this because the drill bit kept wanting to grab the grommet and spinning it. So what I did is I actually just like pinched it like here, and then I just stuck my drill bit in the side like that, and then I held it while I was pushing it through. And you can see there we weren't able to get a hole, and most of our wires is going through the center of it, so drilling to the outside here shouldn't damage those. So once we get that hole drilled, we're going to be taking the 4-pole flat harness section from your kit here. It looks like this. We're going to take the 2 ends with our bare wires, and we're going to simply begin shoving them through that hole that we just drilled. So next we need to come inside the vehicle on the passenger side here. We need to remove this panel and then this panel here. Take our flathead here, twist that, should release that. Now we have one more down in here. Should just have to spin it, and we can pry it out. And once we get that one out, we're going to have 2 more on the inside here, which are just simply going to pry out. Now once we have the fasteners out, we should be able to pry this panel out here. We do have a couple other components that are kind of holding it in the way, so you will have to maneuver that out a little bit, just like so. And next we have this tray here. So again, those same fasteners removed earlier, just twist them to release and then pull out. And once those are out, assuming there's no more, we should be able to remove this panel. So once we have that panel removed directly in front of our battery, you should see those 2 wires that we routed through earlier. So what we'll do now is we'll just begin pulling them up to give ourselves a little bit more room to work. We don't have to pull it all up, but we do want to give ourselves around a foot or so of lead to make our connections. So now we're going to take the 4 wires that we routed from outside the vehicle to go to the trailer plug. You're going to need to separate them 2 and 2, but we're going to begin stripping some of the jacket off. And then we're going to be attaching them color for color to the 4 wires coming from our converter box. So the butt connectors are already pre-crimped on to the converter side, so that means we just need to do that for the side that goes to our connector. So again, it's real easy, just color to color. We only have 4 connections to make. And then once we get all these connections made, these do appear to be heat shrink butt connectors, so I'm going to take out a heat gun and I'm going to seal those all up. So now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to come outside the vehicle. We're going to take our 4-way plug. I'm going to route it over here to the center of the trailer hitch, and then we're going to secure it to the safety chain loops using the included dust cap that comes with your connector. So we have some zip ties in our kit provided for this, so just make sure you do a good job securing all that extra wire. They do recommend having a loop up here by the trailer hitch just to give you a little bit more slack here so you're not pulling your wires through. But we're going to go ahead and do that now, and then we can sort of show you what it looks like when we're done. So here, if we take a look over to where we have going inside the vehicle, you can see the wire loom coming over and across. We just have it zip tied to those existing wiring, a couple more zip ties, and then we ran it back behind the cross beam and attached it to the safety chain loop on our trailer hitch here using the included dust cap, just like so. So now we're going to come back inside the vehicle here, directly behind the passenger tail light. So this is the connector that attaches to our tail light. And we're going to be splicing some of these wires into the wires from our converter box. So what we need to do is we need to go ahead and remove that fabric tape. Now I don't really like this stuff. It's kind of hard to get off. It doesn't necessarily just peel off. So what we're going to do is we're going to carefully take a razor knife here, and I'm going to cut that fabric tape as best as I can without piercing the wires inside of it. Oh, so there we go. We were able to peel that back. Now a lot of the times the loop for it or the end of the tape is all the way down at the harness, so you can't pull it off like we're doing now, but we got pretty lucky here, so we're just going to keep unraveling that all the way down until that little plug there. So that's a little connector that just goes to a part on the body. It just simply plugs in like so. So you may need to pull that out to give yourselves a little bit more room. But now we're going to go ahead and separate our wires just like so and get ready to splice into them. So now we're going to go over the connections that we made to the taillight connector on the passenger side. So the red wire is the stoplight switch circuit. That's going to go to the gray and blue wire. The brown wire is the running light circuit. That's going to go to the yellow wire. And then the green wire, which is for the right turn signal circuit, that's going to go to the blue and brown wire. And now next, we have the yellow wire coming from the converter box. This is the last signal wire coming from our converter box. We're going to route this over to the driver's side of the vehicle, and we're going to attach that to the blue and green wire coming from the taillight connector, using the same method we just showed you. So next we should have two more wires coming from our converter box, a black wire and a white wire. Now these last two connections are pretty simple. The black wire is going to be for power. So what we're going to do is, we have plenty of extra here. I'm going to go ahead and trim that off. And then I'm going to strip back some of the wire here because we are going to crimp on the yellow fuse holder that comes in your kit. Now I've already pre-assembled ours, but we have a butt connector on one end and a ring terminal on the other end, so pretty straightforward. The butt connector end we're going to attach to our black wire. Just like that. And this other end here is going to attach to the positive battery terminal. So we're going to take a 13mm socket. You're going to pry open that little cover there, just like that. Then I'm going to loosen that nut. And finally, I'll take our ring terminal here and attach it to there, just like so. We may need to bend this up a little bit to get it to fit in there. And then we'll just simply re-secure our nut. So we'll go ahead and tighten that nut down, securing the ring terminal to the positive battery terminal. Keep in mind, we don't have the fuse installed yet. We'll do that a little bit later. Now finally, we have our ground wire. Again, plenty of extra we don't need. What we're going to do is, we're going to crimp on a ring terminal. So again, these come in your kit. You don't have to worry about supplying them. Now normally, once we get this ring terminal on here, we would attach it to the negative battery terminal. But on this particular vehicle here, it's pretty corroded, so I want to make sure we get a good ground for this negative terminal, or for this negative wire. So I'm just going to use a self-tapping screw, and I'm just going to drill it straight into the body. But I'd say most of you guys are probably going to be better off just attaching it directly to the negative battery terminal. So now we're ready to install our fuse, and you probably have some extra wires that we need to address. So we're going to go ahead and take some zip ties, and you also get a double-sided piece of tape in your kit here you can use to secure the back of the converter box somewhere if you have some room, or you can just sort of tape it to some other wires here. Most of the stuff is just going to be hidden under this panel anyway, so you shouldn't have to worry too much about tying everything off. But now we're going to go ahead and plug our taillights in temporarily so we can test everything out to make sure it's working. And then if it is, we can button up all of our panels. But the reason I'm doing this testing now is we don't want to reinstall everything, then come to find out we have an issue and have to tear it all back apart. So now, as we said, test everything out. We're going to start with the brakes. See, we have those. The left turn, right turn, and then follow that up with our tail lights. So there we go. Now we know everything's hooked up and working correctly. So now that we know everything's working correctly, we can go ahead and button up our vehicle here, reinstalling all of our panels that we removed earlier, as well as the bumper fascia. So we've got everything installed, but this panel here, this is the last panel. This is the one we actually need to trim though, to allow clearance here of our latching mechanism. So we do have a diagram in the instructions, but really the best way to get sort of a guide to what we're going to be trimming is just to simply hold it into position that it's going to be located, and then just sort of make a couple marks there where you think you need to take out in order to manipulate the latching mechanism. So we've got a couple marks made here. We're going to go ahead and trim that up, then we'll retest fit the panel, and if it works, we can secure it. So we've got our panel test fit here. As you can see, we have plenty of room to manipulate the latching mechanism. Therefore, we've done enough trimming. We'll go ahead and re-secure it now in the same fashion that we removed it. And that's going to do it today for our look and installation of the Stealth Hitches Hidden Rack Receiver with Towing Kit here on our 2013 BMW 3 Series convertible.